And we are live. Hello and welcome everyone to a special Bulbacast for Pokemon Day 2023. I've got here with me several members of our Bulbagarden team, so why don't you introduce yourselves one by one? Glick, you want to lead us out?
All right, I'm Glick. I'm the head of the TCG section over on Bulbapedia.
Kasumi?
Hello, I'm Kasumi. I'm part of the Twitch stream team and art team on Bulba Garden.
And Caps fan.
Hey everyone, I'm Caps. I'm an admin on the forums as well as a member of the stream team. Great to be here.
And I'm, of course, Archaic, Bulbagarden's head honcho since 2002. And man, just saying that makes me aware of how much my chosen username becomes more fitting every year. Okay. Well, let's just dive straight into things, shall we? What do we think is going to happen? Of course, the big thing everyone's been talking about has been the possibility of Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, Crystal being on Nintendo Switch Online. But what else are we all thinking might actually happen during this upcoming Presents presentation?
Generation 10. Just leave all this Scarlet Violet nonsense behind. Just go full steam ahead.
Pokemon Sleep.
Honestly, I think we might actually see Pokemon Sleep. Didn't the trademark get applied?
Yeah, I've honestly been trying to keep away from some of these spoilers for the past few days from people doing things like, data mining websites and so on and so forth, but my understanding is there was something with the Pokemon Sleep website redirecting or something over the last couple of days. So yeah, like the Pokemon Sleep URL previously directed to the patent application, and now it actually leads to a page on the Pokemon website announcing the presents. So yeah, I'd say there's a good chance Pokemon Sleep would be there. And well, to be honest, with how bad our sleep schedule's been the last few weeks, I wouldn't say no to it.
I will definitely be down for it.
Yeah, I think it's got a
What we
good.
don't know is that Pokemon Sleep is actually one of the Generation 10 games, along with Pokemon Awake.
Look,
Yeah, I think Pokemon Sleep will definitely be there. I think, I believe in the last presents they said that the update that they released for Pokemon Cafe Remix would be the last update for that game. So I don't think we're going to see that there. I can see Pokemon Sleep taking its spot in kind of the mobile and evergreen games section that typically takes up the first portion of the presents. To that point, I think that we will see new content for Pokemon Unite, probably a couple of new Pokemon. I have seen rumblings about that across Twitter, and probably something for Pokemon Go. I don't know what it will be. I don't know where they are in terms of releasing Pokemon for that game, but I'm sure we'll see some sort of content there. And I think that's probably when we'll get Pokemon Sleep is through that first portion.
So I just want to link to something you said there about like a typical mobile focused section and everything. So Kasumi and I did a rewatch of the Pokemon Day Presents for the last 2 years, and we have to remember here that the Pokemon Presents format only started in June 2020. Before then, they were doing Pokemon Directs. So like they had a Pokemon Direct in January 2020. Nothing, no video presentation for Pokemon Day that year. And the very first Pokemon Presents on Pokemon Day 2021, well, so it wasn't the first Pokemon Presents, but the first one to be on a Pokemon Day in 2021, it didn't have any mobile stuff whatsoever. It was 3 trailers, basically. It was Pokemon, new Pokemon Snap, Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl, and Legends Arceus. And that's all it was. So, given the very short history of Pokemon Presents presentations, I'm not sure we can assume that they're going to follow like a single format. So that I don't know if there is like a guarantee that they'll do like a mobile game section at the beginning talking about like all the little events that each game is doing.
Yeah, but there's gonna be one, definitely.
I mean, they've only got 20 minutes. I think it depends like how much they've actually got to say.
Whatever they did in like the past few ones, it was like a very short thing. Because they mentioned like Pokemon Go and Unite.
Yeah, I think as long as there's content for both those games, they will show up at these Pokemon presentations.
Yeah, Masters
Obviously, they want people to continue playing these games, even though most of the content for them is already out, right? Because they're free-to-play games and they rely on microtransactions to get profit, right? So they want to make sure they're constantly referencing these games so that people are constantly reminded that they exist. Maybe pop back in, check out the new features, and maybe even spend some of their hard-earned cash. So I understand what you're saying, Archaic. I agree. It's not something we can assume is going to be there, but I think there is a high percentage chance that there will be kind of a mobile section.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess the question is how long and detailed is it really going to be? I mean, Masters EX has already started its lead up to 3.5 years, and I don't know, it feels like if they do cover the mobile stuff, a lot of that's not going to be actual fresh announcements. It's just going to be reiterating announcements we've already had.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we'll get I do think we'll get new characters for Unite. I think that's definitely something that's going to happen, but it'll probably be like very similar to other announcements that they've given in the past for those sorts of games. Like, oh, well, you can get this person in Masters EX for higher percentage chance to pull them in whatever gotcha system Masters EX you did.
Yeah.
Oh, well, check out this new I don't know, Go Community Day for March 2023 is going to have this Pokemon. So on and so forth.
Yeah, I have to say it. After the nightmare of the recent live event in Los Angeles, it feels almost like reminding people about some of these events in Pokemon Go would be just as dangerous as them bringing out DLC for Scarlet and Violet when they still haven't given us the full patch yet.
That's true.
That's what the Spike Chunsoft announcement's supposed to do. It's supposed to distract from that.
Speaking of, Spike Chunsoft is going to be there. Do we think? Do we think they're going to show a new mystery dungeon game? I would love that.
It could be.
I I hope it's an actual new game and not just a remake of the Explorers games again.
I agree. I agree.
I think they're
Hey,
going to have.
Quagsire. Nice to see you.
I think they are going to have some uh, spin-off game of some sort. I don't know quite how well Mystery Dungeon did on the sales charts, but if it didn't do too badly, I could see them doing something else there. But I also couldn't really see them having a brand new game in the series already ready. I mean, like, at this point in the Switch's life, I mean, yeah, we're expecting the Switch successor will be fully backwards compatible, but you'd think if they wanted to show off a franchise that they're trying to resurrect and they wanted a brand new game for it as opposed to a remake, that at this point they'd probably wait for the Switch's successor and fill the time between now and then with remakes of games from the past where they're trying to bring back those side game franchises. So like, I don't know if Ranger or something like that could work on Switch. I mean, heck, I don't think they do Pokemon Dash. Though,
No.
well,
Please no.
I mean, the Switch. I guess Switch has got Mario Kart DLC still coming out. If it didn't have that, I'd say, well, Nintendo needs a new racing game. But I mean, I would love to see Pokemon Conquest with how buddy Toei Tecmo's
Koei.
been with
For Tecmo.
Koei Tecmo.
Koei Tecmo.
Them.
Koei Tecmo.
That one.
Yeah. Ah, jeez. See, I really do need Pokemon sleep. But yeah, Koei Tecmo, with how buddy they've been with Nintendo, I mean, I'd love to see another Pokemon Conquest. That would be awesome.
Pokemon Conquest 2 would be really, really good. I mean, I think tacticals in general have sold really well in the Switch generation, from both of the Fire Emblem games to Triangle Strategy to Tactics Ogre Reborn, which did really well. And I think that's kind of like one of those hidden gems that a lot of the Pokemon fandom likes. I don't know. I don't think it's as likely as a new Mystery Dungeon, but it's certainly possible. I think more possible than something like Ranger, which I really don't see them adapting the control scheme of Ranger to a home console.
Jeez,
Or
imagine.
Coliseum 3, which is I think somebody at Pokemon got asked if they were going to make a sequel to Coliseum and XD and Battle Revolution and all that, and they just laughed. So that's definitely not happening. As much as that would be great.
I mean, I feel
but-
like Colosseum at this point, if they were doing something along those lines, it'd just be a new main series game, because that's really just an RPG with a certain story. So I don't think we. Well, you could get a direct sequel to that, but it'd probably happen in like a Legends spin-off. Though speaking of Legends, Pokemon Conquest, but your units, your characters are the characters from Legends, or connected to them in some way. Like maybe, I don't know, maybe this is something like before the Galaxy team came in and you're like Diamond Tribe versus Pearl Tribe or something. Clan, yeah. But I don't know. I mean, the original Pokemon Conquest had a range of different scenarios, so maybe that's one direction they could go.
Yeah, it would be nice to see. Sorry, Kasumi, go ahead.
No, I was thinking that like I never played Conquest, but like I'm pretty sure that we're not gonna see anything like extraordinary out of this direct or present. Sorry, like my guess is like we're gonna see obviously a Pokemon Home update, DLC for Scarlet and Violet, maybe info on the Game Boy Advance and Game Boy games coming to Switch Online, and obviously the mobile games info, but like nothing like, wow, this is amazing.
And I'm honestly wondering if we will get to see Scarlet Violet DLC or not. Like with the fan reaction about like the various graphical issues, etc. I could see them delaying that until they've got the patches out, until they've got some of the goodwill back. I mean, if they announced it immediately, I'd at least say having them as like, we're working on this, but you can't buy it yet. It's planned for release, like in the second half of this year or something.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think that it depends a lot on do they have how many patches do they have? Is this the only patch that they're going to make to the game? Is this something that they're going to try and continue to do as like more and more they figure out how to patch more and more of these bugs that we know exist? If this is the only patch that they're making, I can see them doing something like that where they announce the DLC and kind of say like, "Hey, here's what it's going to be. You can pre-order it now, but the first one's not going to come out until like June,
Yeah.
and the second one's not going to come out until December, right? Something like that, where they kind of like it's there. You can see it. Like it exists. This is kind of what it's going to be about. But you've got to wait a little bit longer. In the meantime, we're patching up the game, so keep a lookout for that, so on and so forth. And I think they're also going to say, the first patch is live now. Like they're going to
Yeah.
shadow drop that patch.
Yeah, like I think.
Hydrate. How are we all supposed to hydrate? Oh, are we getting 4 hydrates?
So
Hello?
so for those who may be listening to this on YouTube and wondering what the heck we're talking about, we are of course doing this live in front of a Twitch audience over on the Bulb Garden Twitch channel, and one of our viewers just spent their channel points telling us to hydrate. That yeah, like I think the risky thing for Pokemon would be giving people the impression that they've been working on DLC instead of working on the patch. And I mean, like, I think you and I know that they could easily be doing both at the same time, because the kinds of people who would be working on the patches wouldn't necessarily be the people who'd be working on the DLC. Like, yeah, like you couldn't have, say, a concept artist doing work on patching the game, because obviously that's not their skill set. You might have some animators working on the patches for certain graphical issues, but just throwing more animators at a task isn't necessarily going to fix the problem quicker. So, like, I know that they can work on both in parallel, but I think a lot of people, if they get the impression that, oh, you're working on the patch so you're working on the DLC instead of the patch, that could lead to a bit of anger, and I think they want to avoid that impression.
Yeah, the ignorant internet. I agree with you. I think that it's highly probable that they're working on both in parallel. If we remember back to this Sword and Shield DLC, if I remember correctly, there was a whole brand new team that was like put together that was focused only on the DLC. Like it had its own director, and they segmented off a certain portion of the developers to go work on that DLC. Well, presumably, the rest of the team was split in two to work on Legends Arceus and then also Scarlet and Violet. But I can see them like doing something like that, if only to kind of save the notion, like it's a PR move, right? They don't want to make you feel like they're not patching the game that's broken, and working on something new for it. They want you to understand. This is something they're working on actively, whatever. But I mean, that's all. That's also a question. Like, would they actually do that? Would they actually look ahead, or would they think, oh, DLC equals profit? We got to announce it as soon as possible. We don't care what people think, because people are going to buy this DLC anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked in the past about would the sales of Scarlet and Violet send the wrong message to the Pokemon Company that they can get away with half-assing it and still sell immense quantities of product.
Listen, that's my fear, and that's probably what's going to happen. Unfortunately.
The entirety of the AAA video game industry shows that pays off in the end.
Yeah, I think Nintendo
Call
being
of
one of
Duty
the
released every
outliers.
year. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, like with Nintendo, one of the outliers. Most of their in-house developed games tend to have a level of polish that is above the standard AAA developer. I mean, look at the quality of the Zelda series over the course of 20 plus years. But Game Freak is not Nintendo. I think that it's possible that they do kind of go the way of Bethesda, and Ubisoft, and
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen that they've been trying to push the games out on a very rapid pace compared to the past, and that this is probably harming the level of polish of the games. At the same time, I mean, we're all adult fans sitting here and complaining about this. What do the kids think? Because I'm sure, as far as they're concerned, the majority of play, and I don't know how much data they're actually actively collecting on this, but you'd think they should have it from like Nintendo account data. If they're looking at it as, well, all these adult fans are complaining, but the kids aren't, and it's the kids who are the primary purchasers of the games, they might think that, oh yeah, kids are used to playing games like Minecraft and whatever, and they don't care about these graphics things to the same extent that all these adult fans do, so who cares what the adult fans say, because they'll keep buying it anyway.
That's a good question, no?
Yeah, I mean, it does seem at least that they've paid some attention to it, given how their patches are noting, like, oh yes, we're listening to fans' feedback, yada yada yada. But I do also wonder about the priorities of that patching team in terms of what they're looking to patch first. Let's pull up just quickly that the patch notes that they released. And to be fair to them, they did say at the time that this wasn't a complete patch notes. So there may be other things coming in this patch that weren't previously mentioned. But
I think that's probably because they wanted to announce that there was a patch, and they would continue work on that patch until they had to release that patch. And so I think we'll probably see full updated patch notes when they release that patch, which will be probably on Monday.
Probably. I mean, what it seems like they're fixing a bunch of Terror Raid battle bugs, which is good.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, those have probably been the ones most actively impacting people, like trying to complete events and so on and so forth. And
there's a couple of quality of life things, like being able to within the boxes rename your Pokemon instead of having to pull it out and rename it.
yeah, so there's a few quality of life feature adjustments. What it doesn't have, just looking through this, there is nothing in here for graphical fixes.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't think there will be. I think that I do think that there will be performance upgrades through the adjustments of other patches. For example, I think they're introducing a patch that will. They're essentially part of the patch, right, is to prevent the game from crashing on a whim, right? And I think they also mentioned in the patch notes, in order to do this, the number of Pokemon that appear in the overworld will be reduced.
Same as NPCs.
Sorry.
NPCs as well, not only
Yeah,
Pokemon.
NPCs and Pokemon in the world will be reduced. Which, I mean, NPCs, like, great. The towns are going to feel even more lifeless, but like most of these NPCs were not doing anything anyway, so I don't really care. The Pokemon in the overworld, I'm like, yeah, there's probably like too many Pokemon in the overworld. It'll be interesting to see how much goes away, because I think if you take away too much, it will take away from the fact that Paldea is very lively when it comes to, the different types of Pokemon and the amount of Pokemon you can catch in one area. But
my
with
fear,
less enemies
though,
in the overworld, you're going to have better performance. That's basically the point that I was getting. But
I-
with graphics, I don't know if they'll do anything that major.
my fear though is that fixing the performance by just reducing the amount of mobs in the overworld is the lazy way of doing it. That is not optimizing your game to perform better. That is just going, oh well, we'll just remove the amount of characters so they're not going to cause as much load. And like, we know the Switch is more than powerful enough to do what needs to be done for this game. There are plenty of other AAA titles that have done very well with having a lot of mobs on the field. I mean, something like, say, Xenoblade 3 or Zelda Breath of the Wild, even. Like, compare the performance of those to Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and all these things are like, oh, Switch not powerful enough. It's like, it's more than powerful enough. They're just not very good at optimization. And that's been a problem with Game Freak, going back to when Iwata had to save them in the days of Gold and Silver. So I'm afraid that, like, yeah, they're fixing the stuff in battle. But I'm afraid that the stuff they're doing in the overworld, from the to be fair, the little we've seen in the current patch notes, that they just aren't giving us what's actually needed.
Well, I mean, it kind of like they're just prioritizing like bug breaking, game breaking bugs for now.
I mean, I guess it's better than nothing. If they figure they can't fix it properly, at least giving us the band-aid until they can is something.
Yeah, that's my view. Honestly, I'm glad we're getting a patch rather than absolute silence. My hope is that they will, take this kind of feedback, this response from their unfinished game, and then go and devote more time into their next game. But, who knows if that'll actually happen. But it's good to see that they are, recognizing that, this game is, not exactly the best. And in terms of, the actual like back end development, and going through and fixing some of those major issues, I think is at least a step in the right direction. They wouldn't have done this for something like Sword and Shield.
To be fair, Sword and Shield was more complete than this this game.
Well,
So
they wouldn't have done. They didn't do it for something like Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, which had soft locks like implemented on accident into the game.
Oh well, yeah.
So I at least think it's a step in the right direction.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of us were very disappointed with Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. They suffered from being more remasters than remakes.
Remaster in quotation marks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of masters, and I'm not getting to Masters EX here. I'm getting to other areas of the Pokemon anime. Well, Pokemon franchise, but like the anime. Pokemon Presents hasn't really had a history of engaging with much of the Pokemon fandom apart from the games. It has acknowledged them, but how likely is it, do we think, that they might give us info about, say, the upcoming new anime series or the upcoming Scarlet and Violet era for the trading card game, which has already actually started in Japan?
I mean, they don't have a history like talking about the anime, as in Ash's anime. I'm pretty sure in 1% that they actually announced the Twilight Wings and
They did, yeah.
the Hisui the Hisui anime as well. If they're gonna say something about the upcoming anime, they're just gonna announce like the protagonists, like Rico, Roy, and Fried, and that's probably gonna be it.
So just repeating the news we've already had for people
Yeah,
who
yeah,
haven't been paying attention.
yeah.
Yeah, I
there's
imagine
no
that's
chance of
actually
talking
fairly
about the
likely.
anime.
You do think that?
Like, the anime is produced by an entirely separate company from the people who make the games and the TCG. Like, there's so many licensing and legal agreements between them and was it TV Tokyo that airs that thing?
Mm.
Like, they're
Yes.
not gonna bother anything major.
Well, I mean, I think they're in a unique opportunity right now where they recently announced, the end of an era that lasted 25 plus years, right? I think if they had to do it, they would do it now, and go through and jump through all that legal mumbo jumbo or whatever, to make it happen, especially for, longtime fans of the series who may have grown up watching the anime in addition to playing the games. But I mean, is it something that I think they'll focus on? No, I think that they'll probably just, like, if maybe they'll give a trailer. If they say anything, they'll give some sort of trailer, that shows what might be coming in the next season of the anime, next arc rather.
I mean, a trailer would be pretty huge. We haven't had anything like that yet.
Yeah, the only thing we had so far, like after the current anime airs in Japan, is like just a snippet of the characters and their concept art, and that's it. And we got one for Rico, one for Roy, one for the Professor Fried this Friday. So I'm assuming we're not gonna get something like very detailed.
Yeah, I mean,
But the fact that the fact that the uh, English Pokemon Twitter account has been tweeting about these things when in the past they haven't before could be a hint that they're gonna say something, even if it's not major.
yeah, I mean, like, even though the episode where Ash becomes the champion isn't yet available to Western viewers, I mean, it was reported in the world's media, so I don't think they'd have much hesitation about talking about it in the Pokemon Presents, especially given that they're probably assuming that the audience of this kind of presentation would skew a bit older than maybe the overall target audience.
Yeah, it's hard to think that like A 5-year-old would be watching something like this.
But the TCG you mentioned, I believe the TG Live, the replacement for the online virtual battler, is due to, I believe it's supposed to hit 1.0 the first or second week of March. So I imagine we'll hear something about that.
That's a good point. That is meant to actually come out of beta and replace TCG Online. I think it's a couple of weeks before Scarlet and Violet officially launch. So yeah, I think it's at the end of the current Battle Pass. So I'd have to check the dates. But I mean, to be honest, it's not ready to come out of beta. There's so much still missing from that app. They I think they're going to have
So you're saying
problems
it's
with
the
it.
perfect successor to online.
I mean, it's missing features that online had at the moment. And I understand that they can add some of those things in later. And there are some things that it does do much better than online, though some of those I suspect were essentially beta rewards for players. Like being able to get certain decks very easily through the battle passes, even without actually paying anything for the battle pass. And just all the free decks that the beta just gave you when you created your account in that to begin with. I don't know if that's going to still be available to people, and if not, then, well, there's going to be some issues potentially for people just starting for the first time. I mean, there's no significant single player component to the TCG Live. I mean, TCG Online single player component is a bit anemic and hasn't been updated in years and uses like outdated theme decks and doesn't really teach you much about strategy, but it's still there, it's still playable. And yeah, in live, the best a new player can do. Oh, I guess you can test decks against the AI, but we had someone in the stream just on Tuesday who was talking in the chat, and they were like, "Wow, I didn't know that feature actually existed." And even then, the AI is actually probably even worse in live than it is in online. It just has better decks.
Yeah, I know nothing about TCG or TCG Online, so I won't pretend to make a prediction about that.
Same here.
Well, I could make a prediction, it just wouldn't be an informed one.
Absolutely.
I mean, what I would like to see for TCG Live at some point is having it on Switch. Like
That makes a lot of sense, yeah.
Like the fact that the Switch doesn't have a Pokemon equivalent to Hearthstone or something like that available just seems completely backwards to me.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely agree there.
and it's not like there aren't other Pokemon free to start games on Switch. I mean, Cafe Mix is on there, Unite's on there, so
Quest is on there.
yeah. All right, so are we all thinking pretty much the same things are likely then? I guess the only other one we haven't discussed in depth of the main predictions going around is Gen 1 and 2 games on, and maybe Gen 3 games on Nintendo Switch Online.
Well, I do think that one thing that Kasumi brought up earlier that I think is very likely that we haven't talked much about yet is home functionality for
Yeah.
Legends Arceus. Does Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl have that too? I don't think they do they?
I think they
think
do.
it does.
Do they?
Yeah, I think they do.
Okay, so then it would just be Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet home connectivity with those games. I think that is probably more than likely. I have no reasoning behind this. I haven't seen or heard anything that would lead me to say that, but I think it's about time that they added it, especially for Legends Arceus. Getting those Hisuian forms into home would make a lot of sense, in my opinion. Especially if, we did see Hisuian Zoroark in one of the trailers for Scarlet and Violet, and it wasn't in the game. So we know it. We know it eventually should be coming in some shape or form. But yeah, I think that's probably more than likely. It's something that I think a lot of people are going to forget because they're just going to assume it exists. But it very much does not.
Yeah, no, it's something they have promised in the past, and it's the kind of thing that would make sense as a. This could be like the additional thing that's been held back from the patch notes that like the home support's been added.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that's
But
why the
Go
patch
ahead,
was talked about. That's why the patch was put out early with all its technical details before the presents, because within the what is essentially a commercial, they're only going to talk about the new stuff and not mention how their game is busted.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
They'll be like, and in addition to these new features, we've also resolved a number of technical issues. For more details, please see the patch notes. Blah blah blah.
No more mention of it.
Yeah, it'll be glossed over as much as they possibly can. I think they will have to acknowledge it just because of how big the backlash has been, but they won't belabor the point. They'll just say, "Hey, we fixed it."
Yeah, pretty much.
So we talked generally about potential DLC, but we didn't really go over what we think that DLC would contain.
That's a good point. Like,
that's true. We could talk about that for a bit.
I did wonder, actually, after seeing Freed and Captain Pikachu, thinking, we don't have a Pokemon professor for the Paldea region now, post-story. And a professor whose thing seems to be around a concept of freedom kind of works for open world. I mean, he's a plane or airship pilot. So maybe this professor is your means to get to the area that's slightly disconnected from the rest of the region where the DLC story takes place, if it doesn't actually take place in the main Paldea region.
This is just to be clear.
Pokemon battles, isn't it? Like they said, oh, he's the battling professor or some such.
Yeah, but I mean, his outfit is like based around like an old time pilot's outfit, and you've got Captain Pikachu wearing a pilot's cap.
Okay, so we are talking about the Guzma lookalike. Got it. Yeah, I think that would be really cool if they brought him in with the DLC. I think that does make a lot of sense. Who's going to fill the void of Sada or Turo? I think, isn't there,
just Jock.
Well, okay, but okay, fine, but I think another thing that they're probably going to touch on in the DLC in some way, shape, or form is that there's that one. What is it? The disc Pokemon that exists in the Scarlet or Violet book. I think they're definitely going to have something relating to that. Thinking about back when the Pokemon Company, justified their release for DLC. They talked about how in the past we've had to release third versions of the game that kind of completed the story in some sense, or was the definitive version of the game, and now that we have DLC, we could just release DLC. Typically in a third version, we'd have a second or an expanded story from the original games on some third legendary. I think that makes a lot of sense to include in a DLC. So
Actually,
that's my prediction for the DLC. Is we're going to see that disc thing in some way, shape, or form.
perhaps this might link to that, depending on exactly what. I'm trying to remember, what did the book say about that disc Pokemon? Was it?
I can't remember.
Yeah,
I just remember
It was something
having
about
the-
like how the explorer, I can't remember, Heath, what's the name of the explorer? That he found it and that he wasn't sure it was a Pokemon or a machine.
Okay.
And then they provides the drawing.
Okay, it's just because I was remembering that when Pokemon Sleep was announced, it said it was going to use the Pokemon Go Plus device to track time spent sleeping to affect gameplay. Now, gameplay in what? I mean, I don't think they'd still be using the Go Plus device now, not unless they were going to re-release that. If that was going to be that device, then maybe it would just be with Go. But could they do something to link Pokemon Sleep and your time spent sleeping to the DLC? Like, maybe we need an actual legendary Pokemon themed around sleeping there. So maybe the disc Pokemon's not the best for that, unless I don't know the machine device, whatever, being something in Pokemon Sleep related to that. I don't know, just a random thought, but
Yeah, I'm guessing it would probably just be gameplay contained within Pokemon Sleep, not anything outside of it. But it's at least an interesting idea.
The machineness of the legendary I took to supposed to be reminiscent of the time machine itself. Like, I'm thinking the legendary actually has some sort of time travel abilities.
So another Celebi, another Dialga.
if they've got,
I'm also assuming that whatever big new area they put in the DLC is actually the past and or future, because that's just right there. It's kind of obvious.
It makes me wonder if this DLC will have like some time travel thing, like you were suggesting. If we're gonna like in Scarlet go to the future and see Professor Turo, and in Violet go to the past and see Professor Sada. I mean, it's probably a long stretch, but like possibility.
I mean, I'm left wondering, just thinking of discs and what Pokemon have been connected to that concept before, and how discs have been used in the game before. I mean, maybe
We're going to see Mega Love Disc.
I mean,
I want to see Mega Love Disc.
We already do. It's called a Loma Mola.
Oh, true.
That is true.
The Pokemon's a disc because time is a flat circle.
I'm just left wondering if you would have. Okay, so let's say for a second they do have stuff with Gen 1, 2, 3 games in Nintendo Switch Online. Would they only be able to export Pokemon to Pokemon Home, or would you use the DLC as an opportunity to allow them to have a more direct connection to Scarlet and Violet?
I would say probably the former.
I can't imagine a technical way you would actually do that without utilizing Home to connect accounts and everything.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I'm just remembering that the old time capsule for like trading Pokemon forwards and backwards in time.
That was really nothing more than a in-universe reason to allow trading between the two games.
Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be something that is part of the story on a DLC. It's just a mechanic.
Can we talk actually a bit about the NSO games? Just because I don't think we've talked about that yet, like
No,
you mentioned earlier. Okay.
No. One last thing I wanted to say with this was, so we talked about Freed and perhaps their connection to this DLC, or how they could perhaps be used. Roy, we don't know much about him, but we do know that he's from Kanto, owning a mysterious Pokeball, and I wonder if that Pokeball itself could perhaps be a connection to that disc Pokemon.
An anime character with a special Pokeball tied to a time-based Pokemon. Where have I heard that before?
Oh boy.
Yeah. The fact that they aren't resolving the GS ball in the fight. Well, I mean, they still could, but yeah, there's
I
nothing.
doubt they will.
There's nothing said in the episode previews for the final 4 eps that suggests he is. So yeah.
Absolutely not.
But yeah, okay. So I just wanted to mention that. So yeah. Switch Online. Do we think it's happening?
I think it is happening.
Definitely.
I think that it is not going to be as happening as we would like it to be, but it will be happening. I can see them doing a shadow drop. And here's why, actually. Switch Online does not have a Nintendo 64 game set for February, and they've been consistently dropping one a month since they announced the expansion pack. I saw something recently where they took away the subtext in the trailer for Pokemon Stadium and Pokemon Stadium 2, that portion of the expansion pack announcement, the extra expansion pack games announcement. Initially, there was text there saying you will not be able to interact with other games or something like that. And from what I understand, they actually took that away from the trailer in an edit to the video. So I think my big prediction for this, and this is a prediction because I'm not 100% sure it will happen, but I think it is likely to happen. Maybe not all of it, but part of it. Have to be clarifying because people on the internet are mean sometimes. I think that they are going to shadow drop Red and Blue onto Nintendo Switch Online for Game Boy. They are also going to shadow drop Pokemon Stadium 1, Stadium 2 in Japan, for N64 expansion pack. I think that they will announce Gold and Silver coming to the Game Boy Switch Online at some point. I do not think we will see any mention of Generation 3. That is my prediction.
I don't know if we'd have the shadow drop. I'd be more inclined to say if we're having a shadow drop immediately, that it's going to be the already announced Pokemon trading card game on the Game Boy. We know that's coming, we just don't know when. I think for formal announcements of things coming, I'd be more inclined to say yes, they're going to confirm it and give us dates, but those dates will be a bit more spread out. And I think that those dates might include Gen 3, but that coming like much later in the year.
See, Gen 3 is kind of... I don't know about Gen 3. I think that Nintendo will probably want to wait on Gen 3 because it's a bigger, quote unquote, bigger title in terms of substance than the original two. You could argue either way on that. Personally, for me, I think Gen 3 is, I don't know. I see them dropping other games before they get to Gen 3. And so I don't think that they're going to announce any sort of dates on it. I do think it will eventually come to the service. I just don't think it's going to come for a while. So I don't think that they would announce something with, like something small, like a downloadable game that's free for people who subscribe to his subscription service. Like, I don't think they would announce dates too far ahead of time for something like that.
See, I could see them announcing it maybe without a date, saying it'll come in future. But I mean, the reason I think it's definitely going to happen is simply because 3DS is not going to have the eShop soon. Therefore, there's no longer going to be a way for people to purchase Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. And it's going to soon enough become impossible for people to take Pokemon from that gen and that region and bring them into the new games. I mean, when we're now restricted to Pokemon from Sword and Shield onwards, which Pokemon do we lose? Because there's a bunch of Pokemon that, without our national decks, there's a bunch of Pokemon that we have no way to catch. So surely they're going to give us a means of accessing those, and that's why I think it has to happen sooner rather than later, because otherwise you're potentially going to distort like world championships and so forth if there's going to be people who have access to older mons and others who are basically reliant on being able to get one from global trade so they can actually breed it up and so forth. I feel like they would try to find a way to make it so everyone could get it, even without necessarily having to trade.
I believe that we're gonna get some announcements of games that are coming, but no like Shell Drop, the TCG maybe, possibly Red and Blue, and that'll be it. And then we'll get like an estimate timeline of future releases.
The only way I see them not dropping Gen 1 day of is if they're waiting to drop Gen 1 and Fire Red and Leaf Green at the same time to act like a like an upgraded version for the upgraded subscription service.
That's an interesting idea. I don't think that will happen just because why wouldn't you play? Well, I mean, if you have the expansion pack, why wouldn't you play Fire Red and Leaf Green?
Because you want to connect it to
nostalgia,
Stadium
maybe?
1?
Okay, or that. But, yeah, I don't know, man. Pokedelta does have a good point, though. You can get Gen Pokemon, or Gens 1 through 4 are all in BDSP.
That is true.
So you can already get that. So, but that is a good question. Maybe that's part of the reason why they pushed having this Pokemon Home connectivity, so they can just wait until they release the Gen 1 games on NSO, and then they can just update it all in one fell swoop, and boom, you have access to Pokemon Home for 3DS, LGPE, Sword and Shield, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, Legends Arceus, Scarlet and Violet, and Gen 1. Right? But who knows?
Another aspect of Gen 1 drop we haven't talked about, the NSO has full online multiplayer.
Oh,
This
yes.
time, those original games will actually have online multiplayer for them.
Yes, and the multiplayer in the Game Boy Advance app acts as a emulated link cable. So I'm wondering if that kind of framework already exists in the Game Boy app.
It does.
And we would be able. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Be able to trade Pokemon with your friends online through Red and Blue.
Yeah, people
Pretty darn cool.
have confirmed it. I'm not going to go into the details of how they've confirmed it on stream, but they've, yeah, it works perfectly, both local and over the internet, I'm given to understand. So,
I mean, that is fantastic, honestly.
yeah, it's not
super
going
cool.
to be like a global trade system or whatever. I'm fairly sure you can only do that with your friends, but that's still going to work like that. And realistically, this does mean that we are going to have some kind of Gen 1 tournament or something on the Bulbacast Twitch channel at some point.
That would be a lot of fun.
I'm just looking forward to actually, so Pokemon trading card game on Switch Online. I talked about, oh, great, with multiplayer functionality, this might mean we can use Card Pop and get a complete card decks. Because, of course, there's cards that you can't get without using that functionality. But it's occurred to me, from what you've just mentioned there, Glick, if the multiplayer is only emulating the link cable and it won't emulate things like the Game Boy Color's IR sensor, then Card Pop won't be functional and so we'll still be stuck. That would be annoying.
That would be annoying.
But at least we could still play some games online together.
Absolutely.
Do you think there's a chance that they finally translate TCG Game Boy 2?
Oh, that would be amazing.
Ooh. I don't think they translate it, but I think they drop it on the Japanese version of NSO. Because they've done that for other games in the past, like the non-localized Fire Emblem games they've already dropped for SNES and NES Online.
Honestly, I'd be fine with that as well. I've been wanting to play that game legally for ages. I have a retro console that would even let me play the original cart and apply an IPS patch to it while playing the cart so I could play it in English. But I will settle for having it in Japanese and playing it in Japanese. I can do that.
What about the Pokemon Picross that was never released for the Game Boy Color? There's been a big leak of that recently, and the thing is largely complete. Do you think there's any chance of them doing a Star Fox 2 to us?
Now that might actually happen because there's precedent of it with Star Fox 2.
There's precedent, but at the same time, it's like such a... Like, Star Fox 2 was a very well-known big thing. Picross is a... I mean, it is essentially complete. And it possibly is actually fully complete because, I mean, sure, the ROM leaked, but That's not necessarily the final ROM. But is it big enough for them to care about? I don't know.
Hey man, I'll take more Picross any day. I freaking love Picross. I eat those games up every single time a new one drops. I'm like, I'm there. I'll shell out my $5. Play me some more Picross.
Yeah, I mean, like Pokemon Gold and Silver's original Space World 97 demo had a Picross minigame that never came out. So, I mean, the connection between Pokemon and Picross goes way back. But yeah, I would love to see it. It just feels really unlikely. I feel like if we ended up getting some Pokemon Picross stuff, we'd be more likely to get like Picross NP Volume 1 on the Super Nintendo Switch Online, because they do seem to be talking about releasing some of those like Nintendo Power Service and Satellaview stuff on there at some point.
What about a new Pokemon Picross game?
I mean, they had one on the 3DS, so maybe.
It was pretty good.
It was great.
I mean, well, I mean, I've actually been going back to it recently because I was like, oh crap, I'd better finish this off before before Switch on, so before 3DS eShop goes, just in case I feel at the last minute that I do need to buy pick rights to avoid a grind of like 15 pick rights a day. Unfortunately for me, I have gotten to a point where all I can do is the daily thing to grind pick rights to unlock the final area. I have no more missions that I can actually finish.
Does switching the date on your 3DS allow you to challenge that every like for multiple times in one day? Have you tried doing that?
Oh, no, I haven't done that. I probably could, but that's so fiddly.
It's using your resources. They
Uh,
didn't patch that out. Then it's just using your resources. What's available to you?
but yeah, like Pokemon Picross would be amazing if they would release something like that. And it's the kind of small thing that I could see as a shadow drop, and that would definitely work well for the Switch. I mean, there's so many other Picross games on the Switch already, including several licensed ones. Though that in itself might be a limiting factor. Like, how recent was the last Picross game? If it was only a short time ago, there's probably not enough time for Jupiter Corp to have made a new one yet.
Realm of Monster. I'm not sure if they did, but I will tell you that time traveling in Animal Crossing was a big thing. So I'm assuming they didn't make that, impossible to do in across all Switch games. Referring to day swapping.
Actually, speaking of 3DS stuff, do you think there will be any acknowledgement of the fact that certain Pokemon games can still be bought on your 3DS and Wii U systems for like 3 more weeks?
I don't think so. I think if anything, they remind people about Pokemon Bank and how that whole thing is going to work once the eShop shuts down. Like you can, after this date, don't forget you can download Pokemon Bank for free on your 3DS
Oh, you need to
or
download it
something like that.
already. You can use it for free
Well, you
after
need to
that date.
download
Yeah.
it, but then you can use it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it would be good actually if they did have an announcement of that in the video. I don't know if they will, but as it is, I'm a little confused about, like, should I be buying a pass now before that happens, because I mean my pass expired ages ago, and I'm like, will it only work for people who had actually used the software before, or will people using it for the first time maybe still be able to use it? And of course, you have to get Pokemon Transporter, you have to download Pokemon Bank first, and then you download Transporter within Bank. So,
yeah, that's a big consideration.
like,
If you want Transporter, that's something you're going to need.
Yeah, like, will people be able to download Transporter if they've downloaded Bank but haven't used it before that date?
I don't think they'll mention Transporter, though, because what, using KR's example from chat, we will release these games in the future on the Switch. Please forget they exist anywhere else. I think that is true for that's true for the DS generation lower. They might remind you about Bank because those are the 3DS games. You know, most, like, maybe not most people, but at least a higher proportion of people will be able to transfer Pokemon from the 3DS games to home rather than all the way from Gen 3 through Gen 5 into Bank, through Transporter into Bank into home, right? So I do think they probably won't mention Transporter because the general Pokemon fan probably doesn't like care about Transporter anymore, or never did because they never had the ability to, right? But you know, perhaps someone who grew up with the 3DS, you know, might care a little bit more about Bank not being a thing anymore.
Yeah, but the little kids are not gonna care.
Yeah, and all the kids who started on the Switch aren't going to care. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I think the way they did Transporter in general is kind of a weird way to implement it. I don't see why they just didn't release a download on the actual eShop. Why it's like Pokemon Bank DLC or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think Transporter will get mentioned, unfortunately, which is a shame too, because that's the only way to get Unova Pokemon through some of the Unova Pokemon, like what is it? Oh no! Like Blitzel and Zebstrika were available in Alola, weren't they? So never mind.
Mm.
So
Well, on that same sort of point, then, Unova remakes.
that was something that was brought up in chat. I was going to suggest that as maybe like the last possible option for a new game, right? I mean, Generation 10, haha, yes, very funny, but they're not going to release it. They're not going to announce Generation 10. But they could announce Black and White remakes or a Pokemon Legends Kyurem or something similar. I don't think that is out of the realm of possibility as much as I wouldn't like to see it. But I think that's definitely something we should talk about.
I'm not sure. A lot of people like speculate in the past that the next Legends games is, if there is one, is gonna be like in Johto, and I think it's possible because of the connections between Johto and Sinnoh, with the whole events from Diamond and Pearl being like around the same time period as like Gold and Silver. But
Yeah, and then the connectivity between Heart Gold and Soul Silver and the Arceus event
yeah,
and that sort of thing. Yeah.
that could be like more possible than Unova. Though I wouldn't mind seeing an Unova, but like maybe the Unova remakes Black and White. But after the fiasco with Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, I don't know if they are prepared to announce something like that.
Yeah, and Black and White, you start to get into a kind of weird point because of how unique that generation is.
Mm.
You know, like, do you just do Black and White? Do you do Black all in one? I think the easy answer there is, oh, we'll do a Legends Unova at some point, and we won't remake Black and Black and White 2. But or we won't remake Black and White 2. We'll just have a Legends Unova instead. But I mean, I don't know. Gen 5 is gonna be really interesting to see what they do with Gen 5. I have no idea what their plans are.
The only kind of Legends Kingdom game I'm interested in is Pokemon Conquest 2.
What was that, Glick?
If
Yeah, you were
there was a
breaking up.
Legends Kyurem, if there's a Legends Kyurem, I'm only interested if that is actually Pokemon Conquest 2.
Oh man.
That'll be.
Okay, what are your thoughts on Black and White remix?
Black and White never had a third game. They had sequels.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, given the difficulties created by that generation, maybe the best route is not to have a remake in the sense of a faithful remake like Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl were, but to take advantage of the whole multiversal stuff that Pokemon has been embracing with some of its past games, and have a game set in Unova that is a new take on the combined story of Black, White, Black 2, White 2, like, and bringing the storyline into just one single game with all of the towns. Maybe not, like, maybe we still have all of the gym leaders as characters, but maybe depending like which game you get, certain gyms are available, and the other ones are like recently demoted or like are upcoming things trying to become gyms or whatever. I mean, we've seen that sort of thing already in Sword and Shield, with like different characters being the gym leader depending on which game you've got. So that's got precedent in Pokemon. And yeah, I'd probably try to approach it that way, because I think it would be far too convoluted to do remakes of Black and White and then remakes of Black 2, White 2. So yeah, a remaster, and I think this would be an amazing time for them to bring back a feature from those games that should never have been left behind. We need the difficulty settings, and give us the difficulty settings from the very beginning, not make us unlock them.
The difficulty settings are interesting. I've always meant to go back and try and play Black and White 2 on hard mode or whatever. I just never have. I don't know how they would implement that in an open world. Thinking about keeping that feature on for future games. But maybe for the remix, I mean, I would like to see it. I would certainly like to see it.
I mean, the easiest way to do it in an open world is to just make it so the AI cheats. So just be like, okay, you're playing on hard, so every stat that your
RNG
opponent
is
has
worse.
a 1.2 modifier. So they always do 20% more damage than it would do if it was a player on that level and have 20% more hit points and yada yada yada. I mean, that's one way you could do it. Or even just don't adjust the wild Pokemon, but only adjust trainers. I mean, there's a few ways you could do it. I'm sure that wouldn't be too difficult. But yeah, certainly for these older games, I feel like, well, like you mentioned, you never went back and did it. And who did? I mean, to go back and do it, you need to basically trade all your event Pokemon away onto something else, so they're all stored away, so you haven't lost all that stuff, and start again. And who's got the time for that? They made it too tedious to use the difficulty functions for all the effort they put into it.
I never realized that was a thing. I only play the games once and that's it.
Yeah, and I suspect many people are the same.
Yeah. KR Black says the kids would have meltdowns with that, adding difficulty settings back in. I don't think the kids would notice.
No.
Maybe I'm discounting kids too much.
I mean, no one's asking to add something like Fire Emblem's insane difficulty, or whatever they call it these days. But
I would love a Nuzlocke mode. It's into games. I'd love a Nuzlocke mode. But, I mean, yeah.
Well,
Let them
definitely not like Madden.
permadeath on Pokemon games.
Like, challenge modes built into games seems more like something you do for Nintendo Switch Online. Like, there's those. Are they in
the
Switch
special versions?
Yeah.
You thinking of those? Yeah.
Yeah, like
only beat Red with a Pikachu in Gold and Silver or something like that.
Oh, that'd be tough. Just a Pikachu.
Just an example. But
Make you have a Pikachu on your party, yeah, but just a Pikachu, that'd be tough. But yeah, like things like those special versions, do something like that for the Gen 1 or 2 games to allow you to essentially enforce those sorts of special rules would be pretty cool. I think it would be unlikely you'd see them in the modern games, though. Not unless it was like a mini game or something. Like, I don't know, if the DLC had you going to this special zone, and in that area you're not allowed to use the Pokemon that you've caught all through Paldea, and you can only use the Pokemon that you can catch there, and you've got a limited amount of balls, and yada yada yada.
any other left field predictions? I guess one thing that I had always predicted for multiple years, but I never got, was a Let's Go set in Johto. I don't think that's going to happen anymore, and because I said that, it's probably going to happen. So you can blame me when it gets announced on Monday. But I just don't see them doing it. I think that the window is passed for something like that. If they do something like that, it will be on the Switch successor. Fortunately, I don't think that's going to happen at this point on the current hardware.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the kind of thing that would happen at some point in the future, but I don't think it's something that really is appropriate at this point. I mean, heck, especially after the Scarlet and Violet backlash, I feel like if they announced that now, people would go, why were you working on this instead of working on the much better, newer games? Why are you remaking these old games yet again and making them into these Fisher-Price My First Pokemon games? And yeah, now's not the time.
Yeah, and something like DLC for Legends Arceus or BDSP or Let's Go is gonna be like probably really out of left field.
I could take DLC for Legends. I don't think they'd do it, but just because I don't think it's sold enough for them to justify it, which is sad. But I would love that.
Oh yeah, me too. But it's just like very, very unlikely.
We did
Launch
have
a full digital console version of Pokemon Batrio.
Ooh. Now, okay, so for those not familiar with Pokemon Batrio and things like it, there's a whole bunch of Pokemon arcade games in Japan that never came to the West, and many of them require these. Well, they're not amiibo, but they may as well be amiibo in their functionality. These various like pucks that you. Well, do you outright purchase them,
How
or
do they do that?
most of them you get
They
through the
tried.
game itself?
They tried on a mobile game, right? They tried. What was it called? Pokemon Duel.
No,
Is
Pokemon
that what it was
Duel
Duel.
called?
was a digital version of the trading figure game, like 12 years after that thing died.
Oh.
Yeah, that was.
Okay. Never mind. No, that's different, isn't it?
Yeah, Duel was weird, and it never even finished its plot. It got discontinued before they even released all the gym leaders. That was that was a mess. um, but yeah, like my only thing with Batrio, like I'm pretty sure that like the arcade cabinet itself can give you pucks, right? You don't necessarily buy them all. You can like win some through the arcade gameplay. I mean, I guess you're buying them because you're having to pay to use the machine, but you're if you did something similar to that on the Switch, how would you get the pucks? Unless they're just virtual pucks that you're collecting. I don't know.
Yeah, you would play the game and it would give you pucks for winning things, and then you'd come back to the arcade because they updated for a new special event, and you beat those trainers, you get new pucks, so on and so forth. They did some mailing campaigns for promotional pucks and whatnot. That's like a whole branch of arcade game that took off in Japan starting in the early aughts, and the only like proper digital release that's ever conversion is for Dragon Ball Heroes, which had cards that it would spit out of the machine, and then you play them, and it would display the character in game, and so on and so forth. And that actually did see a digital release for the Switch a couple years ago.
Okay.
Mm.
And one we've
But
had mentioned. One
the
idea.
major thing difference between these two things is that Takara Tomy is the one who creates the Pokemon games, while it is Bandai Namco, the owners of the Dragon Ball license, that created the Dragon Ball game. So there's no licensing mumbo jumbo to work for them. But with Pokemon, they'd have to involve another giant Japanese media conglomerate.
Well, speaking of Bandai Namco, one of the ideas that we've had mentioned by our viewers in the chat here has been Pokken 2.
That unfortunately has no chance of coming out within a couple of years because the Tekken team is busy on Tekken 8.
And there you have it, unfortunately. I do think that it should come at some point in the future. I mean, it was successful enough to be part of the Pokemon World Championships for a few years. It's actually disappointing that they removed it from the World Champs, replacing it with Unite. But it does feel like something that should come back at some point.
I could see a different Pokemon fighting game brand not tied to Tekken and Bandai Namco, like hire Atlas, like everybody else. Or sorry, not Atlas, Arctis.
Arc System works.
Yeah, they made what, 5 licensed fighting games within the last 4 years.
It'll all be 2D fighting games though, not 3D ones.
You say that like it's a bad thing.
You know, one thing that I just thought of thinking just about what you just said, like hire this company, and then also thinking back to what Archaic you were mentioning earlier about Pokemon and or Nintendo and Koei Tecmo being buddy buddy. What do you think possibility is for something like a Pokemon Warriors,
Well,
where they it's matches the Dynasty Warrior style, similar to what for Legend of Zelda, Persona 5, Fire Emblem Three Houses, so on and so forth.
so that's where Pokemon Conquest came from. I mean, remember that all the characters in Pokemon Conquest weren't based off their Nobunaga's Ambition designs, even though the game was ostensibly a crossover with Nobunaga's Ambition. They were based on their designs from samurai warriors at the time.
Well, then who's to say we won't have something similar in a more Dynasty Warriors gameplay style, in contrast to the tactical RPG style?
I think the major hurdle to that is that the Warriors games have a more vicious feeling to them that the Pokemon brand would not want to be a part of.
Yeah, you couldn't have your human characters actually harming Pokemon directly.
No, it would be human character tosses out Pokemon to deal with Horde in this what are they called in the Warriors games? The little rooms that you have to clear in order to
I feel
sequence
like
the map.
I feel like it would be much more difficult to adapt Warriors style gameplay to using Pokemon that you're giving orders to, because you wouldn't be controlling either you'd have to control the attacks of the Pokemon directly by physically controlling the Pokemon, or you would have to be a character who's running around the battlefield throwing Pokeballs and directing your Pokemon to do things. I think it would be very difficult.
I can see them doing something of a mix of both, where you throw out a Pokemon to fight enemies, and then like you can also recall or switch your Pokemon. And when you recall your Pokemon, you actually move around the environment as a trainer or warrior or whatever. I don't know, just a thought I had. Not a big prediction or anything like that.
I mean, people had actually suggested it for a number of years. But yeah, it's just would. I don't know, it feels like it's less likely to happen. I mean, the whole reason the Conquest happened.
Sorry. Care has a point. I mean, let's remember that we have an actual war in game lore. What
Yeah,
about
multiple.
that Pokemon Warriors, the Kalos War?
As well as the war that Lieutenant Surge tends to mention.
That too. Yeah.
Well, that would be more like taking Advance Wars and doing that with Pokemon. And now I'm just imagining that, and that'd actually be pretty fun.
Yeah, that would be pretty fun.
Pikachu riding around on a little tank.
I'm imagining not even take it one step further. I'm imagining the tanks to have like Pikachu ears and tail.
I mean, if not for the fact that they'd already delayed the Advance Wars remake because of an actual ongoing war, I'd say, hey, sure, that could actually happen. I think maybe that's something that could happen in future, but I think with an ongoing war, they're not going to touch that with a 10-foot pole. And for that matter, actually, I guess that's why they'd be highly unlikely to do another Conquest or a Warriors game or anything like that at the moment. But I agree,
What
it
ab-
could be fun.
what about new Snap 2?
I
I
would.
know
Let's
that's
wait
gonna
for the Switch too.
happen.
Yeah, I think sequels to existing franchises or resurrections of like side game series are less likely at this point than either DLC for existing games or remakes. So
Yeah,
like,
that's why I think we're going to get any new spin-off announced or previously unannounced spin-off be announced at this Pokemon Presents. I think it's probably going to be something Mystery Dungeon related, given the Spike Chunsoft's stuff, as well as, there hasn't been a new Mystery Dungeon game on the Switch. It's just been a remake of an older one. So that's kind of why I'm leaning more towards that as being most likely when it comes to spin-offs.
yeah. I mean, we might get some
And
maybe something like Hey You Pikachu on the N64 Switch Online or Pokemon Channel. No, not Pokemon Channel. Let's not go that far.
Ooh, maybe Detective Pikachu too.
I was
Oh,
gonna bring that up, but like apparently wasn't that something that was um like canceller?
I think recently they announced that it was. I think the movie, one of the actors said it wasn't happening, but then someone else said it was happening. I'm not totally sure what's happening on that, but I think they did say the game is still. Like somebody reported that the game was still in production.
yeah, like
I could be wrong though.
a Detective Pikachu sequel game was first announced back at the end of May 2019. So it's been a long time since that was announced.
What was that, Glick?
They announced too, like shortly after the movie came out and was successful, didn't they?
And
Uh,
that would put it in about the right time, yeah.
So we have a detective game, and we know a game from Spike Chunsoft, the company known for making detective titles. Are they making
Maybe.
Detective Pikachu too?
Maybe they are. That's a good point.
sorry, Spike Chunsoft Detective Pikachu.
Did they make Detective Pikachu the
No,
original?
they did not.
No, that was someone. I think that was a European developer, maybe.
Uh, Detective
They did make
Pikachu was
Danganronpa.
made by Creatures Inc. themselves.
Ooh.
Well, that's what it says in the box. Who actually made it? Someone else.
Well,
Mm.
yeah, okay, but so uh, Spike Chunsoft. Okay, so they didn't. Did they actually develop that, or did they just publish it? Because you're talking about Danganronpa, aren't you? That's what you're
As
getting
well
It
at.
as
looks
the
like
other detective-themed visual novel they just announced at the last Nintendo Direct.
Oh yes.
yeah, they developed Danganronpa and they published the Zero Escape trilogy.
Mm.
Did they develop 999? They developed the mobile version of 999.
I could totally see a Detective Pikachu take on a more visual novel approach than the sort of weird half step between Ace Attorney that the first one was.
I am starting to think this could be more possible than I initially thought when you mentioned it, just by looking at their repertoire.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would be down for that.
Speaking of visual novels, I mean, this is like absolutely way out of the park. But like, what about a Pokemon dating sim? You can try to date the Pokemon professors.
No. they would
Yes,
have
yes,
enough.
yes,
They
yes.
would have way too much trouble on their hands for that.
I'd be too afraid of all the people making jokes about Shino folklore.
Yeah.
No, no. I said Pokemon professors, not Pokemon.
I mean, the professors would be at least more acceptable than the gym leaders.
Care Black says, Sumi, there's like two female
No.
professors, but like,
Hey,
Yes, KR
we
Black, you
have
have
the
to.
well, there's more
professor
than
in
two.
Masters. There's the professor in Bank.
Yeah.
Those are both female too.
I was going to say KR
There's more
Black.
than you.
You need to remember here who the typical audience is for a lot of these dating sims. And I think what Kasumi's suggesting here is more of an otome game.
Yeah.
But would you accept an Otome game where you couldn't date what's his face from Alola?
Uh, uh, oh,
Kukui.
jeez, Kukui.
BTH, I can tell you right now, I am part of that group who does not want to see that. And I really don't like you putting that image into my head.
Yes, I don't like that image enough to not mention it on audio. Let's leave that in the Twitch chat only so the YouTube
Yeah.
viewers don't get it.
Yeah.
A Pokemon Otome game set in Uva Academy
Yeah.
would be more.
Oh gosh.
You could do it, but
Well,
yeah,
only
let's
if you
not.
let me date Arvin. That's it.
How many?
We do forget Kukui is married. Kukui is married. He's off limits. We can't have that.
Dang it.
Admittedly, given the geekiness of your typical Pokemon fan, a Pokemon dating sim based in like the academy in Paldea, where one of the romanceable targets is Penny, would probably go down fairly well with certain audiences. But yeah, it's let's not go there. I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm all for having more ways for us to explore the Pokemon universe that don't involve battling. Like, I'd love a Pokemon game that was just contests, and that was like story driven, and that was purely focused on Pokemon contests or something. So
I would like to see like a farming simulator, like a Harvest Moon, but with Pokemon.
that seems like so obvious that it should have happened already. But yeah, like giving us more insights into the Pokemon world and what it's like living together with Pokemon beyond just what is essentially uh, pro athletes of the universe. Pro athletes who also go on to, for some reason, solve world-ending crises.
Yeah.
I mean, even something like Pokemon Ranger, which was at least like dealing with Pokemon sanctuaries and yada yada and fighting against poachers. I mean, that's still all about battling. And I don't know. I would take like a and you remember those games like Trauma Team and that were on the DS and Wii, where you were like a medical professional and like
Was that an Atlas game?
yeah, well I think there was a game from some other studio as well. I can't remember what they're all called. I mean, there was Trauma Team. What was the other one I was thinking of? I should know because Trauma Center, that was it. But like having that where you're a Pokemon doctor, or something like that could be fun. Or I don't know, just things to give us more insights into this world. And I think that this was why I liked Legends so much, because it gave us a perspective that, okay, yes, it was still very much about battling, but it was coming from like a different time period, very different view on Pokemon, and it actually did have us like seeing people who were getting used to the idea of Pokemon becoming a part of their day-to-day lives.
Pokemon Safari Zone Tycoon.
Style-savvy Pokemon.
Oh yeah, I like that.
I mean, really, you could take any kind of a lifestyle or simulator game and throw Pokemon in there as a skin, and it basically works. Some obviously better than others, but
A boy and his Ditto.
Pokemon puzzle platformer. You know that. I mean, a lot of that kind of 2D stuff has kind of fallen a bit by the wayside, thanks to the Switch. But I mean, yeah, I could see it. Luigi's Mansion with Gengar.
Fantina's Mansion.
Fantina's Mansion.
And what would your contest like game be? Would it be more like a rhythm game then, I guess? Or I don't know.
A rhythm game is something like Game Freak could do, because I mean they already did Harmonite.
Hmm.
Stray, but with a talking meow. Hey, robot, get over here and pet me.
That'd be... oh dear.
I'm just having a look through like my part of my old game collection here to get inspiration. Let me think. I mean, you already mentioned like a tycoon kind of game, like city builders and things along those lines. I don't know how you'd implement Pokemon into that without it feeling like just a skin.
Yeah.
Pokemon racing games, we haven't had something like that for ages. But the last one didn't do that great, and Mario Kart's got its DLC, so now's probably not the right time. Pokemon exercise game.
That's doable.
I mean, if they were able to do rhythm boxing with Fist of the North Star,
Yeah.
they can do a Pokemon game.
Rhythm boxing with Machamp. Or Hitmonchan.
That would make your instructor very awkward to use. Like instead of having instructions on how you should be doing everything, they're just going Machamp, Machamp, Machamp.
So I know we're about to hit the 2-hour mark. Since we've now strayed so far into absolutely unreasonable things. Do we want to try out? Do we want to try and close out by each kind of giving maybe our top three like biggest or most likely predictions for Pokemon Day as a kind of closer, just
well,
to summarize?
your top, let's say your top two biggest predictions and your top two things you want but don't think will happen.
Sure.
So, well, let's go reverse order then. So, Caps fan.
So top two biggest predictions are Scarlet and Violet DLC and announcement of Pokemon Home support for um, Pokemon Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet. The two predictions that I want to happen, but I'm not sure will, are what I mentioned earlier with the Red and Blue online connectivity with Stadium 1 all shadow dropped at the same time. And Pokemon Conquest 2, because I love tactical games.
Okay, my turn, man. I think the most likely, obviously, Scarlet and Violet DLC and home compatibility. And for things I would like to see, Legends Arceus DLC and maybe new DLC for new Snap, but that's probably not happening.
The two things that I think are happening are Gen 1 Shadow Drop and Scarlet Violet DLC, but I think it's going to be one large chunk at the end of the year, not the staggered thing they did for Swish. And the two that aren't happening, but I want, is the ridiculous Batrio idea and TCG Live as a console client for that.
So I need to find some things that you haven't all said already. All right. Shadow drop of TCG for the Game Boy on Switch Online as happening. With the other games announced as coming, maybe with dates, but not immediately dropping. So that would being like Gen 1, 2, maybe even Gen 3, as well as like dates for Stadium 1 and 2. And look, I'm going to go out on a limb and say it'll be there. Pokemon Sleep. It's happening.
Heck yeah.
Don't know exactly what it will be, but it'll happen. Things that I would love but don't expect to happen this year. I was about to say, like, okay, I don't think Unova remakes are going to or remaster or whatever they do with that is going to happen this year. I do think it's on the cards, but I think it's going to be like their pattern is basically going to be main series game, DLC to main series game, spin-off game, main series game. That kind of 3-year pattern. So I think Unova remakes better chance next year than this year. And want it to happen, don't think it's going to happen immediately. Detective Pikachu 2. I think it's in development. I think it's obviously had issues. And I feel like maybe they're holding back on it. I mean, it might be that they've cancelled it and that they're planning to come back to it, or it could even be actually finished. But that they're holding back on it until Detective Pikachu 2, the movie, is actually ready to release alongside it, and I don't think that's happening just yet. So I think that one won't happen at this Presents, but maybe that could be announced later in the year. So there we have it. Those are our predictions. We'll see if they happen, but we're on the record now. That's all been recorded. This will end up going on our YouTube channel, and it will be highlighted on the Twitch, so you're going to be able to go back to it and see how right we were or how so very, very wrong we were. I mean, it is only 20 minutes. We have to remember this presentation. It seems like it's a long time, but 20 minutes in 2021 was 3 trailers. And they were big announcements, to be fair. But just 3 things. And one of them was already known. So there's only so much they can cram in there. And some of this stuff may get pushed back a bit. But we'll see. Okay.
It depends how long the Ed Sheeran song is going to be.
Well,
yeah, they'll probably throw that in there just to screw with all of the people live reacting to it on Twitch and YouTube. So they'll all get DMCA'd.
Yeah. I mean, the recent song they released in Japan for the TCG Champion Road was amazing. That'd be cool to have. But, I mean, we did get the bump of chicken thing before, but I don't know if we get something like that in this presentation. But anyway, so as I said, we're on the record. You'll all be able to see how well we did or didn't do. Kasumi and I will be live reacting to the Pokemon Presents presentation when it's up, and after that we will be immediately. One sec, is it in the morning our time, or is it at midnight this one?
It's midnight.
It's
our
midnight,
time.
so we'll be going to bed immediately after the live reaction.
But we will be reacting in a cast to it, right?
Yes, we will have
Yes.
another cast. We still need to figure out an exact time for that, but I mean, follow us here on our Twitch channel, and you'll be able to get a notification of when that goes live, and we'll throw it up in our schedule once we have actually found a time that works for everyone. But yeah, being a midweek cast, we kind of have to work around everyone's work requirements. So yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. Okay. Well.
All right. Well, it's time for us all to head off then. Thank you, everyone, for listening in, for putting up with us for this rambling almost 2 hours of discussion. We hope you've enjoyed this format for the Bulbacast. We hope to be having more of these in the coming months. Well, we'll all be seeing you fairly soon when we see how we all went with these predictions. But until then, thank you and see you around.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.